the Opupka Studios in Oklahoma City. You're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson. Barry Trammell not with us this week. He's on the phone, though, as he's covering the Big 12 men's basketball tournament in Kansas City. Barry, let's get going with our inbox segment. We take questions from email and answer them here on video. Let's go right to the inbox and Bernie. Bernie says, if the Big 12 is intent on staying at 10 all-sports members, maybe it should think in terms of tightening the footprint of the conference with two schools that do not offer football to the conference, like Butler and Creighton. What about this, Barry?
Well, it's an out-of-the-box idea. I've never considered it before. It's interesting because if you bring somebody in like that, they wouldn't share in the football revenues, but they would enhance the basketball. I think Butler and Creighton are headed to the new Big East, but it's an interesting thing to try to get a semblance of the 12. I think the biggest knock against it is I think the schools really like the double round robin. I think they like the non-divisions in all sports, including football, but also basketball. So I don't think it's going to happen, but it's definitely outside of the box. And I like people who think on these things. So kudos to Bernie. I don't think it's going to happen, but I like the imagination.
Yeah, definitely not the craziest idea we've heard when it comes to conference realignment. That's for sure when you talk about Butler and Creighton bringing them to the Big 12. But I tell you what, the biggest knock against this idea, in my mind, is that it doesn't involve football. I mean, we know that football is that important, and if the Big 12 is thinking about one day expanding, the idea that they could potentially get to that point and already be at 12 members, but only have 10 that play football, I don't think they want to box themselves into that and get to a point where, do they want to add member 13 and 14 because they play football? It just feels like it would really sort of put them at their limit and they wouldn't be able to add anymore. And if you want to add and you want to expand and football is important and you feel like it is, and obviously the Big 12 does, I don't think they want to hem themselves into this. But Bernie, hey, I don't mind the outside of the box thinking either. I just think the fact that they don't play football, while it fits your idea, I'm not sure it fits in the Big 12. Hey, let's go back to the inbox and this one from Linda. Linda says, what logical reason was there to keep Derek Fisher in the game and not try Ronnie Brewer in the Spurs game, Barry? Great question here.
There wasn't it's not a good reason, and it's frustrating to a Thunder fan. It's frustrating we don't know all about as much basketball as the Thunder do, but I think we can know this. Ronnie Brewer is a better basketball player than Derek Fisher. And when the Thunder's playing the Jazz or the Bobcats or some team, Fisher's fine, but when Fisher's playing, when he's playing a team that's athletic and strong, he's going to be overmatched. He's 38 years old, and the one game he hasn't played since he got here, the Clippers, when the Thunder beat the Clippers in Los Angeles, and that's an example of it's a game he can't play in. I don't think he could matched up well with San Antonio. I'd a lot rather see Ronnie Brewer in than Derek Fisher.
Yeah, me too, Barry. And I tell you, against San Antonio's second team, where you're going to see Derek Fisher primarily play and where you would see Ronnie Brewer primarily play, they get a lot younger and a lot more athletic. We talk about the old Spurs, and obviously when you start with Tim Duncan and Tony Parker being older, Manu Ginobili being older, yeah, they are older, but you go to that second unit and some of those spillovers from the first unit, Danny Green, Leonard, Kawhi Leonard, those guys are not old. They're anti-old Spurs. They're young guys, and when it comes to trying to chase them around and keep them from, cutting into your lead or maybe taking a bigger lead, Derek Fisher's not the right guy for that. I think Derek Fisher does a lot of great things. Barry, you had a blog about this, does a lot of great things for the Thunder. Great leadership, great voice in the locker room. But when it comes to chasing around guys that are 25 years old, who are big and strong, I'm just not sure that's what he does well. In fact, I'm sure it's not what he does well. Give Ronnie Brewer a try. Hey, let's go back to the inbox for Mark's question. Mark says, will OSU and Texas be the Big 12 favorites in football this year? Barry, what do you think about that?
You know what? I'm thinking I'm going to pick TCU. I love the Horned Frogs. Got a ton of starters back. Got most of that defense back that was very solid. And has a quarterback returning in Casey Payhall, who missed most of the year with the drug issues. But I tell you, the Frogs have to come to Norman and have to come to Stillwater, so that's a negative. But they host Texas. Gary Patterson's a fantastic coach. And that defense was on display late in the year. The Sooners had scored 51 on OSU and 50 on West Virginia and ever how much, 45 for whatever it was on Baylor. They go to TCU and get out with the skin of their teeth 24-17. So TCU plays defense. And I think I'm going to pick the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be one of the teams to be reckoned with. I'm going to go with OSU. I think I'm not going to pick Texas because I still think Texas has too many unknowns with their quarterback situation. Same guys that have been, sort of scuffling back there for several years or scuffling there again. Maybe one will emerge and suddenly, take the reins and be really good, but we haven't seen it yet. I don't anticipate seeing it. But we know at OSU, they've got quarterback talent. They've got proven quarterback talent. And I think anytime you're talking about preseason football favorites, it's good to start with a team that has a really good quarterback. OSU has 3 that are pretty darn good. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys, although it's going to be interesting to see new offensive coordinator, although they've said they're committed to running the same system, and a change at the defensive coordinator spot, although a guy that's been involved with that. So do they do some things different? What do they do different? How does that impact things? I still think they've got some really good talent, but I go back to the quarterback situation. When you've got somebody proven, that really helps your chances, in my mind, when it comes to preseason favorites. All right, back to the inbox one last time, Barry, and this one from Joe. Joe says, if I were Millwood, why would you take something you didn't deserve? Give the trophy to Hugo and show some class. Barry, we're obviously going back to the high school state boys basketball championship. Hugo scoring a wrong way basket. Millwood wins. They go on to win the championship. What about this question from Joe?
I use this question just to let most of our viewers and our readers know that we appreciate them, especially the ones with a lick of sense, because not everybody out there has it. And Joe, this has got to be one of the most idiotic questions I've ever seen. That Trey Johnson scored the basket for Millwood. You can't take points off the board. It happened. It wasn't a violation of rules. It wasn't an officiating error. It happened. It's like a field goal that clangs off the upright and goes in, or goes off somebody's helmet. If it happens, it happens, and it happened. Now, did Millwood deserve to win the game? I have to say yes. The scoreboard said so. If you want to win the game, don't make a basket for the other team when you're up 1 point with 1 second left. Is it a shame? Yes. Is it horrifying for the kid? Yes. Is it disappointing for Hugo? Yes. But it happened. When it happens, it happens.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Barry. I don't think Millwood can give it back. I think that at this point, you just have to go with, like you say, go with what happened. It is unfortunate for Hugo. I had a chance to talk to Trey Johnson this week. Still, you could tell just really heartfelt disappointment in his voice, and that he talked about just going through the whole thing. Tough to hear, and I know that he's starting to wrap his head around it, as I'm sure the rest of the team is. But what's it going to do to give them the trophy? They know that when the scoreboard was finished that night, they didn't beat Millwood. So how are they supposed to embrace a championship that wasn't theirs? Millwood winning a double overtime game and a triple overtime game in the championship to win. It's a mess. Let's be honest. There's no way around it. It is a mess. But I think Millwood went on to show that they were a good team, a team that deserved a chance to continue on if the scoreboard said so, and it did. So I think everybody's looking at Hugo next year as a team that they're going to be pulling for in their heart, and I think that's a great thing. It's just a matter of a mistake being made, and everybody sort of has to live with it and move on. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.